series about how to make French beaded flowers. In the last lesson, I taught you the first of the 4 basic techniques for making French beaded flowers, and that was called the basic frame. So in this lesson, I'm going to teach you the second of those 4 basic techniques, and the second one is called the continuous loop. The stamen of this flower actually uses a variation of the continuous loops. So we'll make that piece after I show you the technique, and then we'll assemble the entire flower together. So at the end of the lesson, I'll also give you the pattern completely written out for you for this flower that I created, and I'll teach you how to read it properly. So I hope you enjoy the lesson. Okay, let's get started with the continuous loop technique. So I've already pre-strung some beads onto the wire because that just saves some time with the lessons. And basically, a continuous loop is a very simple concept. So one loop after another, and this is what I'll be teaching you how to make here. So what this would be on a pattern is 3 1-inch continuous loops with 3 inches of bare wire for the stem. So I'll explain that as we go here. So basically, when we're starting out, we want to leave a few inches of bare wire, pinch where I don't want the beads to go beyond, and now I need to measure 1 inch of beads. And you need to be precise with this because we want each loop to be consistent. So, 1 inch. Make sure you pinch at both sides of the beads tightly and bring one side to the other. I use my thumbnail as a guide because it makes it easier to make sure that the beads don't slip. And then you need to twist it about 3 or 4 times to secure the loop. So that's our first loop. Now when you're twisting, it doesn't matter if you go counterclockwise or if you go clockwise, just do whatever feels easier for you. But you do need to be consistent because if you switched it up partway through, then all of your loops could unravel, and we don't want that. So the second loop would be 1 inch of beads again. And if I just twisted it right here, then the twist that I would make would twist up into the twist for the first loop. And then it wouldn't sit very nicely. We'd have them all jumbled together. And if you're making a row of, let's say 10 or more loops, then it would just be a disaster. Nothing would fit together properly. So you need to leave a little bit of a space so that you have room to twist the wire for your second loop. So the way that I do that usually is, I guess about 1/4 of an inch, sorry, 1/8 of an inch, and then I measure it with my thumbnail and use that as a guide and pinch very strongly there. And then I bring the loop in to where I've pinched and then twist there. Now when you're doing this at first, you might slip up a little, and it's just going to take practice to learn the technique. So don't get discouraged if your first few tries don't look very neat and tidy. But if you did leave too much space, then you'd have big gaps in between your loops, and you don't want that either. So if you're having trouble, just undo the loop and try again. Okay, so for our last loop, another inch of beads. Mark about 1/8 of an inch over with your thumbnail. Pull the loop together. Oops. See, it's easy for the beads to slip out there. Okay, and then twist 2 or 3 times. And that is 3 continuous loops of 1 inch each with about a 3-inch stem. So now we got to cut it from the spool wire. And that is the continuous loop technique. So now we're going to make the stamen of our flower, which, as I said before, is basically just a variation on the continuous loop technique which I just showed you. So what we're going to need to make for this is 3 continuous loops with 1/2 inch long twists, and instead of measuring by inches, we'll have 5 beads per loop. So I'll show you how that works. So we're going to leave a bit of a stem, about 3 inches. Take 5 beads and start twisting. And twist until the twist is about 1/2 inch long. There. So there's the first loop. For the second loop, we want to have enough space to twist 1/2 inch as well. So I pull up the wire beside the first loop, leave a little bit of extra space, about 1/8 of an inch, not too much more. Pull up another 5 beads, loop them, and twist until you meet the first twist. So now we have 2. Bring up 5 more beads and do the same thing with this one. So mine are a little bit uneven, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. Now we got to cut them from the spool. So cut them at the same length as the other end of the wire, approximately. And this is the stamen cluster there, which is going to be the middle part of our flower. Alright, so it's time to assemble our flower. So the first thing that you're going to need is your stem wire. Now these are just some scrap pieces that I have left over. I've already actually wrapped them, the actual stem that I want. So I'm going to show you how to do that now with these scrap pieces. So when you're wrapping the stem with the floral tape, you don't actually want to twist these wires together because we want a nice smooth texture to the stem afterwards. So take our floral tape and, starting at an angle, wrap the floral tape onto itself and pull it, and that's what makes it become sticky. It doesn't stick to your fingers or anything, but it does stick to it itself. So keep working your way down. And then just pull it off at the end. And just work it in your fingers until it gets nice and smooth there. So that's how you wrap the stem. So now that I have the stem wire wrapped, we're going to start adding the pieces onto the flower. So this is the stamen cluster that we made earlier, and we first want to attach this to the stem in the middle. So we're going to add the petals on all around that. And the easiest way to do this, many would say, would be to just wrap this wire around, just the wire that we have with us. But again, we want a nice smooth finish to the actual stem. So I don't like to do that personally. I like to take my assembly wire and add things on that way. So start unraveling a little bit of the assembly wire. And this is a really fine gauge wire. Now, we don't actually have to tie this on with knots or anything because this is all going to be wrapped with floral tape later anyways, and all our work is going to be covered up. So the way that I do this is I take the assembly wire and I put it so that it's going down the stem a couple inches, and then pinch near the top with my left hand. And with my right hand, I wrap the flower around. Sorry, I wrap the wire around the stem of the flower. So you want to wrap it around a few times to secure the first piece on. So now that's attached to the middle. And then we'll take one of our petals. Now this petal, you want to make sure that it's nicely shaped before adding it to the flower. So the best way to do that is to put your thumb in the bottom to give it that nice cup in the bottom part. And then with the top thumb and this part of your finger here, your forefinger, just shape it so that it curves nicely. And you can keep working that until you get it how you like. And then make sure that this part of the stem is sitting well so that we can attach it to the flower. So now I pinch with my left hand right at the base of the base twist of the petal, and then wrap the assembly wire a couple times around, 3 or 4 times or so. You want it to be really secure, because if it starts flopping around at all, you know that it's not going to sit nicely, and that after the construction is finished, it won't look very nice. Unless you wrap it really tightly. Okay, so now we're going to add the second petal. I'm going to shape that again. And add that next to the first one. Now, no flower in nature is completely symmetrical, generally speaking, so don't worry if it's not completely perfect. It just gives it more character. But you do want to kind of you don't want it like over here, but you want to stagger it a little bit. So this petal will be slightly underneath the first one. And then wrap around with the assembly wire. And I'll just get the rest of these petals finished and add them onto the stem, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I have the remaining petals attached now to the flower. And this is what it should look like at this point. The one thing I forgot to mention is when you're wrapping the assembly wire, make sure you wrap it very tightly, because you don't want anything to be loose at all in the actual construction. Yes, we are going to cover everything with floral tape after, but it's the actual wiring that will keep everything nice and snug and will keep your flower lasting for years after you've made it. So make sure it's nice and tight. Don't get discouraged if your first flower doesn't look perfect. It does take practice to get the technique, as with any of the other techniques with making French beaded flowers. So now that I have all the petals on, we need to cut off the assembly wire. So what I like to do first is I like to wrap it down the stem a little ways, and I just make sure that everything sits nice and smooth. And disperse the stem wires of the petals around the stem so that it sits smoothly. And not too far. You don't want to wrap too far down. Just enough so that, if it unravels at all, it's not going to cause problems near the top where the construction is. And then clip it away from the spool. So now at this step, we want to wrap with the floral tape all the way down the flower. If you find that any of your wires, or if for the petals, are all sitting at the same length, then just clip them at different lengths so that it sits nicely, so that you have a nice tapered look to your stem afterwards. Because if all of these are clipped at the exact same length, then you'll have an abrupt change in the stem, and it just doesn't look very nice afterwards. So I'll just get this started here and wrap the stem. Make sure your floral tape starts right at the base of the flower here. And this will just cover up all of our wire work. And wrap it until you get right near the bottom, until all of your wire is covered. Okay, there we go. So I had a little bit of technical difficulty with my last video, and it didn't record part of the project. So basically what I've done to this point now is I've added the leaf on, and I've added it about 1.5 inches to 2 inches below the actual flower. And then I wrapped the stem with floral tape. Now there's part of that step that I need to show you again, so I'll just add a little extra tape just to make it clear. So take a little section off of your tape here, and you'll want to split it down the middle, and I'll explain this in a moment. You'll only need a small section for this, and we want it thinner because we're actually going to start wrapping just above the leaf here. And the reason for that is that when you wrap at an angle starting above the leaf like this, and then wrap it really tightly right below, actually kind of just above the base of the leaf, and then keep working down, it makes it have the appearance that the leaf is actually growing out of the stem, if you can see that there. And it's just that little attention to detail that makes your flower look that much nicer as a finished product. So after that piece is done like that, then just continue to wrap the rest of the stem with floral tape, and then you'll have your completed flower. So here's the lily pattern which I created for this course, and I hope you enjoyed making it. I'll teach you how to read the pattern now. So we made 5 1-inch basic frame, which is the BF, pointed top, round bottom, PTRB, 9 rows reduced to 1 wire, and that was for the petals. And the leaf was made the same way, so 1-inch basic frame, pointed top, round bottom, but with 11 rows and reduced to 1 wire of the leaf color. And then for the stamen cluster, it says 3 5-bead CL, which means continuous loops with 1/2 inch twists. And so I hope that you really enjoy this. Feel free to reuse the pattern, and you can distribute it with the link to this video or to my other videos, and give me credit for the pattern if you want to, give it a copy of it to your friends or whatever. Just make sure that you refer them to my videos. And so I hope that you've enjoyed making these. In the next videos, I'll teach you how to make the other 2 of the basic techniques that we haven't done yet. So the continuous wraparound loop and the continuous crossover loop. And I'll try and figure out a next project. If you have any suggestions, please leave me a comment either in this video or on my channel page. Alright, thanks very much for watching. Bye.